should be joining us, just for your information.
All right.
Okay, well, that means we're complete then. There's no citizens here, Chief, on the call?
Well, let's take one more look. It says 0. Let me put my glasses on to make sure that's not a 1. That's 0.
Join the board.
Excellent.
All right.
Okay, well, I'm going to call the meeting to order, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
We'll take a roll call. I'm here. Larry Luckham.
I'm here.
Okay. Tom.
Here.
Nadine's not here. Eli.
Here.
Very good. Dave.
Present.
Here. And Stan.
And here.
Okay, very good. We got everybody. Very good. So we're virtual. If Chief, let me know if someone from the community comes, and we'll recognize them. But short of that, let's go right to the minutes. Did people have a chance to read the minutes?
Yes.
It
Eli,
looks great.
thank you
It
very
looks
much.
great to me. If there's no additions or corrections, I'll move to approve.
Is there a
Second.
second?
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Then they're approved. Thank you so much. Eli, really a super job. Are you getting exhausted from doing minutes? You really do a good job. Okay, we'll go to reports then. The Fire Foundation, for those of you who I haven't corrected my misinformation, I think I talked to Stan and I talked to the chief, but I misspoke at the last meeting. We did get a number of shares of Microsoft from Donna McCusker, but the total amount of money from it was not what I appreciated it to be. It was actually quite substantial, but a little lower. So it's about $11,000. The stock of Microsoft that Donna gave to the Fire Foundation. So very, very, very generous donation. And subsequent to Donna's donation, Jeff Kramer said that he would match that as well as any donations that came in during our fundraising season, November, December for the Fire Foundation. So I overstated it to start with. I apologize. It was my misunderstanding. It was over $11,000. Jeff is going to match it, so it's quite substantial.
Yeah, that's well enough to get me excited. I think that's a great showing.
Thank you, Larry. I'm excited too. So I'm glad that you were, it reached your threshold also, but very, very generous. Donna's been a very big supporter of the Fire Foundation, as has Jeff. Jeff has been the main guardian angel, but that was very nice. In addition, we've gotten a number of donations from people for our outreach by email and letters. And we did offer anyone who gave $100 one of the challenge coins for the Public Safety Center. And I have sent out about 13 of those already. So that's good. And some of the donations were more than 100. So right now, the present treasury of the Fire Foundation is $40,297.
That's pretty respectable. That's for sure. You know, Steve, I would, this is a good time to do it because I would like to recognize Leonard Thompson because the Fire Foundation was 100% his idea. He brought it from Los Angeles. He introduced the concept to us several years back. And then recruited a couple of us that helped get it started to select make some recommendations for board members. But boy, this was really Len's effort, and it's been absolutely fantastic. It's one of the, I want to say one of the best things that the Fire Commission has done in a very long time. And even though it's not directly the Fire Commission, the creation of it and what have you, and the participation of yourself, Steve, and others from the commission has been just fantastic for the department. So
Larry, thank you.
recognize Leonard.
Would you like to make a recommendation that the Fire Commission recognize Len for his founding efforts?
You know, that would formalize it. I think that's a good idea. So if we could do that, I would.
Okay.
I would like to move that we do a letter of appreciation or recognition for the the creation of the Fire Foundation, Leonard Thompson. So,
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second. Second.
Thank you. It's seconded. Dave, Eli, one of you seconded, or both of you. So all those in favor of the letter of commendation, recommendation, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Fantastic. And Chief, what we may do is, that certificate that Chief Gray put together, and we might want to modify one of those and do for Len. In fact, at the time that he went off the Fire Commission, I talked to him about maybe getting a one of those certificates, and he goes, "It's not necessary. We're in flux, and we don't have to do it." But that might be a good way of doing this letter of appreciation, recognizing him for his time on the Fire Commission and also for his really essential central effort to get that started. It was his idea completely. And I think a few of us felt we're a little bit nervous about money and raising money and managing the money, and we didn't want it to go in the wrong direction. But Len really supported it and gave us examples from LA when he was in LA City and said, no, it can be done. It can be done very, very properly. And I recommend we do it. We did do it. And it's been wonderful.
Yeah, Tom, thank you for your efforts to step in and help with the 503 for the nonprofit creation, the corporation business.
My pleasure.
That's
Yes. Tom was instrumental in that. So that's very important.
great stuff.
I agree.
Thank you.
So real quick, I actually just presented a modified version of a certificate of appreciation to some of our D-Space inspectors. And it was based on the retro nostalgic looking certificate that I like so much. We just put a border around it and we changed the language, but made sure the font reflected some of the original font. I can send you a copy of that so you can see it. And maybe if that's what you had in mind, that's something we can work from. If not, we can explore it. I think one or two other examples that Chief Gray had that didn't quite capture the aura that I was hoping to capture, but I think that one might be along the lines of what you're referring to.
I think that's exactly it.
Okay.
Sure.
It's exactly it. So, and by the way, as far as the foundation fundraising, when all the funds are in by the end of the year, Jeff Kramer has agreed to match it. So not only Donna's, but all the other donations will be matched by Jeff Kramer. And that should give us really the resources we need to provide. One of the requests recently, Chief White has brought to us about the EOC and some computer support. So I think we're going to be fine with doing that. That'll probably happen in January. So this is very good news. By the way, I hadn't quite appreciated until this week when I talked to Jack and Len about the crab feed. I didn't quite appreciate how substantial that crab feed has been for us in terms of fundraising. Jack told me that in general, it's generated about $25,000 each year. And in fact, one year was over 30,000. With the crab feed itself, the alcohol sold, the auction items and such, it's been very lucrative. So not having it this year is tough, but the donations have helped a lot along with the matching donations. So just for background information for everybody. If we can have the crab feed the following year, it'd be wonderful. But that's been very successful. Okay, I don't have anything else on the historic subcommittee. Chief, did you have anything you wanted to say about the historic subcommittee or displays in the Public Safety Center or anything? Do you know any more about that or?
No, nothing more than what's already been in the building up to this point, including the spiral staircase, the apparatus doors, and the railing that's on the outside and the bell. But yeah, one thing we are working on that I can share with the group that's not really historic per se, but it's a, how should we say, it's a blend of the old and new. What we're looking for is we have an emblem right now, much that's similar to this one. That's, this was going to be placed up on the front of the building along with police and the city of San Rafael's logo. But what they had and they showed me only showed the initials SRFD, and it just looked really basic to me. I didn't think it was really fitting for the type of facility we have. So I asked the Department of Building and Planning staff and Public Works staff, could we kind of take that Maltese cross and let our staff, our firefighters and our administrative staff, look at some ideas and options on how we could improve it and make it something that's a blend of the yesteryear with the SRFD lettering the way it is historically on some of our materials and buildings. Combine that also with the year circa 1874, but also blend in something new and additional, like maybe just a pike pole, a hydrant, the terms San Rafael Fire Department in ribbon, different colors. So we've narrowed it down to roughly 4 or 5 different things that I think the majority of the members feel strongly that, you know, this could be a nice object to put on the front of the Public Safety Center. So, well, I think we're down to really 1 or 2 ideas. I'd like to share those with you guys at some future point. I also need to get the city manager's approval for anything that we're looking to propose to go up on the front of the building. But I think it's just a nice blend of the historical side of the organization, along with just the new wave firefighter that's here today that would like to see something slightly different.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's
I think
much
if we
needed.
could incorporate the new firefighting robot or drone that we're going to get soon, that would be great.
Oh, well.
Okay, yeah, I got that in while you were distracted, so.
I had somebody at the door, so. Well, you know, I'll tell you, I hope we could get, at least from a drone standpoint, some ability to get some real-time situational awareness where we otherwise might not have it because of the use of a drone.
Yeah.
Whether that's interior or just exterior, it kind of remains to be seen. But yeah, moving on. Moving on.
Excellent. Okay, Larry, do you have a report for us today?
You know, if I could figure out how to do it, some of you have already seen the article in the paper that circulated over the last couple of weeks. City of Los Angeles had a rather significant fire. I think it went to 3 alarms, if I'm not mistaken, Chief. And they brought in their brand new $100,000 Thermite RS3 robot, which is in essence a VW bug-sized crawler unit. Looks like a little bulldozer, except that it's diesel powered. It's got 20-hour runtime, and it's got nozzle capacity to deliver. I mean, it's master stream. It's 2,500 gallons a minute. There's a website link, and I haven't figured out how to get that stuff in on a Zoom session yet, but it was pretty impressive. And because it weighs 8,000 pounds and has a bulldozer type blade on it, nothing gets in its way. If there's a car that is inappropriately parked, it'll just push the car out of the way. So it's my interest in new technology is reaffirmed by things like that. It's good to see the fire service, which is, as many of us know, traditionally a little reluctant to employ new gizmos and what have you, but this thing was put in service. And according to the reports, was effective because it can get into places where human beings can't, and deploy a nozzle at 2,500 gallons a minute. That's, you know, that's a big ass monitor. A
serious amount of GPMs there, but
Yeah.
I share your interest in things like that. I remember years ago when I was a new firefighter at the city of Oakland, the fire chief at the time, Gerald Simon, was talking about the use of a hockey puck and how this hockey puck, you would just throw it into the building.
Yes,
and it would
yes,
into the fire. And
yes.
everybody was laughing at the idea of a hockey puck replacing firefighters inside the interior of a building. I thought it was strange until I got to see a device that was similar to the hockey puck put in use at our training division when I was in the recruit academy as the recruit academy director back in 2007. And so it told me that there's some brainchild behind a lot of what's going on right now that could be very effective that you use in tandem with responders.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you know, it wouldn't be that you replace, but you use this as another tool in your pocket. I mean, this thing, you pulled like a ripcord on it, like you were starting a lawnmower, tossed it inside of a room, shut the door, and it spun around at a high revolution and dispersed product to basically extinguish the fire.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, is it a danger to somebody who needs rescue? Probably. But
Right. Yeah.
to a situation where you know there's no confirmed rescue and you don't want to put your personnel at risk of a flashover or a backdraft, then by all means, this is something that could work. But I don't know how cost prohibitive it was. But it didn't really take and it didn't really catch with the fire service from what I can tell. Maybe it's being used in other countries or other parts of the world, and I'm just not familiar with that. But it sounds like the device that you've described also is almost like what I would say is a lean in a direction towards the use of some sort of automobot or some sort of robotic responder at some point who can withstand temperatures that a human being couldn't withstand and be placed into the scene rapidly to make change in conditions and or outcomes. So that's huge. With a big drilling capacity, I hear you say it could actually bore into an area also.
Yes.
So imagine a warehouse fire like, I'll say it, Ghost Ship, where I sit inside the building because I've got too much debris. But I've got 8,000-pound behemoth that comes in and clears out the way in 1 minute.
Yeah.
Utility in that. But getting it to the scene and deploying it rapidly is the issue.
Yeah, that's an issue. And then in situations like Ghost Ship where it was known that there was very high occupancy, and it was known pretty much by the first arriving companies that there were going to be dead people inside. You just can't do that. So,
no, you can't use it in that scenario, but I think if you have a tool like this is part of your first initial response, you have a size up that says clearly, we've got a situation here, we need to clear out an exit or an ingress for our personnel. This could actually be something that does it fairly rapidly and by the sound of it, very effectively, especially with a 2,500 GPM. That's monumental.
Yeah. Well, I think with a lot of these things, they're great for a very specific set of circumstances, and in terms of the general response, not appropriate. But on the other hand, for the case where they really work and you can save lives or prevent a building collapse, for example, that pretty quickly adds up to being well worth the $100,000 cost to buy the thing. So anyway, another one of the many things that are going on in fire service. I think,
like the electric fire apparatus that, it doesn't use a diesel engine. They're working on tweaking something like that right now that will be effective somewhere down the road. It's just not quite there yet, but they're exploring it. In Menlo Park, I think, was looking at one closely for a while. And I think down in Southern California, they've actually purchased one or two. So it's the evolution of the fire service. Yes.
Yeah. Good thing.
All right.
Okay, Larry, thank you. Tom, anything today you want to share with us?
No, not really. A couple of questions or comments. One, I want to congratulate the department on, Station 57 was a Silver Lead Award winner or something equivalent for environmental. And that's commendable. I'm really happy about that. So congratulations. And then Chief White, just a quick question. And last month, I couldn't get on last month, or I had problems last month, but there was an accident in San Francisco where a firefighter got knocked off of a 3-story training facility, and I think he died. So I'm curious how the San Rafael department has looked at that incident and is learning from that incident so that it doesn't repeat itself here in our department, both from just a compassion of wanting to protect our firefighters and from a risk management, minimize litigation, minimize insurance costs perspective. So if you could speak to that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. One of the things we've talked about recently, and ironically, just prior to that incident occurring, we had a command staff meeting in which I talked about the need for us to go out and do bread and butter operations, if you will. just the basic foundational things that we would see our department or any other department do when it came to pulling hose, throwing ladders, simulating a first alarm response on a structure fire, just to basically kind of ensure we're creating muscle memory. One of the great things we have is we have that new training facility, but there are a couple of areas of concern at that training facility. And with that, we had some conversation about what areas that we need to seal off that could potentially be a liability or an exposure for our members. And that turns out to be one of the areas. There's like a window at the training facility that's elevated that we decided it's time to caution tape it off and then put an announcement out to everyone that we will not be training in that particular location until we put more time and effort towards ensuring that it's safe. The second component of that is safety officer. The value of a safety officer during training is just as important as it is on an incident. And oftentimes, sometimes I won't say we violate, but we don't do as much diligence with the safety function when we're in a training setting than we do when we're in an actual incident. And so because of that could lead to someone not being able to recognize a potential hazard or the unexpected occurring where you may have opposing streams or something else that disorients an individual, puts a stream and blasts them and potentially blast them over a banister or, right down a stairwell or somewhere else where it's going to create a hazard for them. And so it really all depends on the environment. It depends on the facility, and it depends on the trained eye watching for all of these things, especially when you have a younger department. And it's not to say this individual was younger. I think he probably had at least 10 or more years in the department, but things can happen to anyone. They can happen to the senior, most tenured, experienced individual because the unexpected happens and catches them off guard, or just something that was preventable that we didn't lay eyes on and take steps to assure everybody else recognize the problem here. Those are the unexpected things. And so as far as lessons learned, I don't know that San Francisco's published anything formal at this point. I think they're still in the middle of their investigation. I think ultimately everyone got a sense of what happened without, formally being told exactly what's happened. And so that's what prompted us to start taking a look at what we've been doing in our training facility and just in general. And there was a kind of a reemphasis and message back out to the members about ensuring that everything we did was done with a mindset of safety first. And that ranges from anything to how you step off of the apparatus into traffic. Do you have spotters when you're backing the apparatus, whether you're backing the apparatus into the station, or whether you're backing the apparatus out somewhere in the community? You don't want anyone to take for a moment for granted that this large apparatus, for instance, is completely safe without eyes behind checking to ensure that it's clear, because that's one of our bigger hazards right there. You clear both sides, but then somebody was coming down right out of line of sight and you never ever saw the person. Or a toddler, rushes out, or a pedestrian or a bicyclist. And so you find yourself in a situation now. And so it's an underlying but a very important thing that we do in the way we talk about safety. And so one of the things I also shared recently as we talked about safety, and I go out and I speak to the different crews, is I used to write as a safety officer. I was a former safety officer for several years in the Oakland Fire Department, and I used to write safety bulletins, safety alerts, safety messages. And I crafted these 4, 5, 6 page, what I thought were very informative documents. Unfortunately, I hate to say it, but not everyone's going to read from cover to cover your document, no matter how much good content you've got in there about electricity and safety when it comes to natural gas, electricity and step potential, when it comes to ultrafine particles and what kind of damage those things can be doing to your body without you even realizing it, post-fire environment with the off-gassing that takes place. We got all this great information to share, but is everyone really paying as close attention as you'd like them to? Well, I think this generation of firefighters is starting to pay more attention than they had previously. And so, but for me, what I learned when I went down to the Port of Oakland is their maritime division really emphasizes safety with visual aids. Few words, but a sufficient number of words, but the imagery is what's emblazoned in people's minds. And so I got the permission or the approval to get safety posters put out at every apparatus floor at the previous department I was in. Unfortunately, by the time I got that up and going, I was only able to get one good poster up, and that was right around the time of Ebola. That poster is still sitting in all those firehouses right now, 5 years later, because the next safety officer didn't take my idea and run with it. It's an unfortunate thing, but that's kind of what happens sometimes in the fire service. People have their own ideas about what they want to do. I thought to resurrect it as fire chief, and then I had so many other things going on that became a lower priority for me because we were now focused on vehicle accidents, ensuring our younger members were trained and capable of operating in a tiller bucket, were operating safely because they were finding themselves as new employees facing a lot of incidents, whether it was high rise, whether it was arson, whether it was the ghost ship as an example, whether it was any number of things. These new probationary employees were getting put through the fire, literally. And so we wanted to make sure that from a day-to-day standpoint, they were focused on what they needed to do. I suspended station inspections and apparatus inspections. We just kind of put some things on hold to focus on ensuring these people were safe in what they were doing for themselves and for the community that they served. And so all that to say is I've been bringing the idea back because I'm really giving some thought to, is there a way for me to bring a more updated version of what I had done in Oakland, maybe in a digital format or some other format where we have a poster, but it's really a revolving set of images that are focused on safety as an example. So I'm not always looking at the same thing for months in a row if, for whatever reason, a safety officer hasn't been able to get a new safety poster distributed throughout the department. Well, maybe there's an easier, more tech-savvy way of doing this. And so those are things I like to explore, but that's going to have to come a little bit down the road, unfortunately. So, but to speak to your safety questions, yeah, absolutely. It caused us to do some quick review of some of the areas we thought had potential for catastrophe or injuries, and we took some steps immediately to ensure that our members knew to stand down until further notice on certain things in certain areas.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And if there's anything that I could do or any of us could do to help with safety or getting the word out, just let us know. We're happy to help.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I'll certainly keep that in mind as we start talking about things that can be done within the community from a safety standpoint as well. You know, I'll tell you, one of the things that I'm noticing, well, I noticed especially back in Oakland, I can't say I noticed it here so much, is people don't pull to the right for emergency vehicles like they had been trained to do for so many years, where you'd have a public safety announcement or you'd see something on a billboard or maybe even on television on a commercial or something where KQED or one of the other channels would put out something and say, flashing light, move right. You know, simple things like that. I don't see that same level of either understanding or compliance a lot of the times. And so it makes me wonder, was that our failure to educate, or is that a indifference that we're experiencing, or is it a language barrier sometimes? You know, do we have drivers who are not really familiar with the practice and the custom, and they haven't really learned, you know, flashing light, move right? Well, what does that mean? You know, so, you know, I think there's just a way that we probably need to approach some really foundational things to ensure that when people are in the street and they understand what's going on. And we've gotten to a point where we've had to train our members to, when you're approaching an intersection and traffic is crossing and it's pretty heavy, shut your lights and sirens off. We don't want to force people to panic and pull out into the intersection, as an example, and then create an accident right there in front of us because they felt the pressure of the siren and the air horn and the urgency of the apparatus behind us, and they make a poor decision. And so as frustrating as it might be, they have to sit, turn their lights and sirens off, be patient. When the light changes, flick everything back on and continue to try to push forward as best you can.
Good advice. Excellent. Tom, thank you. Eli, anything you'd like to share with the Fire Commission today?
Yeah, I would just say an observation. We've all witnessed what one kind of election can look like. I just want to call out what San Rafael looks like. And I just want to say that I'm proud as we see city council and the mayor positions turnover, I'm proud to be in a community that we honor these transitions and in a way that I think is dignified in juxtaposition to some others. So I would just say, we're all servants of the public, and I think this is the one act that we do that I think I would say that I have taken for granted, that this is something that should always exist. I'm just proud to be a part of a community that honors how things have been done in this way. So no questions, just want to make sure we're calling that out and observing what our community does.
Hey, Eli, do you know when the new city council is seated?
That's a good question. I've been looking for that. I have not asked Lindsay. My guess is that she would know, but I don't know that information. I have been looking.
It might be December 7th, but I could be wrong.
Because Steve, it might be nice for the new council to meet the fire commission. I think there's 1 or 2 new council members. So some sort of virtual meet and greet or something might be a nice thing to do.
That's a great idea. In fact, I had a brief conversation with Eli about this because it wasn't clear to me who was running and who wasn't running, and when they take office. I did put a call into Kate Collin this morning, and I haven't heard back, but it wasn't an urgent call. But what I know so far is, and you probably know this, but I did a little research. There's now 4 districts. The 4th district is Northern San Rafael. The 2nd district is sort of Central San Rafael. District 1 includes the canal, and District 3 is off to the right and has a lot of space, but not as many people. So now we have district elections. We do have 2 new people. Rachel Kurtz looks to be the top vote getter in District 4. Meka Urins Gulati is District 1, that includes the canal. And my understanding is that Andrew and Mary Beth will continue. Andrew doesn't plan to run again, but I don't know when his time is up. And I don't know when Mary Beth's time is up. So those are the 4, plus Kate being the mayor, so those 5 people. And typically we've made a report to the city council every year, sort of the status of the fire commission. But I think it would be a great idea to have a Zoom meeting where we could just chat and get to meet each other. And since probably they won't take place until at least December sometime, maybe even January, I don't know. The chief is probably right. If December 7th is what he heard, that's probably correct. But I can put a request into Kate to have a meeting between the 2 of us. I think that's a good idea.
I concur.
This is my last term on the fire commission, but some other fire commissioners have to apply again, and it would be good to know everybody when you're reapplying. So that is a good idea. Okay, anything else from anyone on that? Okay, Eli, thank you. Dave, anything you'd like to share with the fire commission today?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the previous conversation around safety and how we can.
Dave, where are you? It's like a jail.
Kind of like that. It's a data center.
What's data center?
It's a virtual background.
Oh, okay.
The state of my house is a little bit messy right now.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So what I was thinking is usually around this time of year, I don't think we did it last year, but we did do it a couple of years ago on our social media handles. So on Twitter and Nextdoor and elsewhere, there are some fire safety tips that we put out to the community. And I keep thinking about the story, Larry, that you told us. And that comes to mind in terms of how we can really help and potentially save lives by communicating some of these safety tips to the community. So similar to what you were saying, Chief, I think the visuals work really well. And I'd be happy to try and find some materials that we could post on the channels. It's really easy. All we need to do is, post it up on Twitter and Nextdoor. But I'm not sure if Quinn or others have some materials that they would prefer to use, but I'd be happy to help find that. Again, I think images are probably the best, and I think having it in multiple languages would be helpful too, at least English and Spanish. And so that would be for the holiday season. And then to your point about the ongoing education around emergency vehicles with sirens on and lights, maybe we can do a campaign after we get through the holidays and use social media channels to just reinforce the message around flashing light, move right, and maybe there's a video that we could use. So again, something visual that I think will be really easy for people to pick up very quickly, and hopefully it will resonate more with them than just the written word.
Thank you. Those are excellent ideas. I had no idea you guys put out something this time of year that was safety oriented for the holidays, and that's excellent. And I certainly, any help you guys can get towards a public service announcement or some other form of messaging through social media and any other means, just to kind of reemphasize those things. I'm a fan again of billboards. I'm a fan of the park benches, the bus stops, wherever people just might happen to be, able to see something. A vehicle driving by. They've got vehicles now that they kind of put a sealant over, and it's a form of advertising. I don't see them as much as I thought I would. I thought that was really going to take off, and so I only see them kind of sporadically. But to me, it just seemed like a really excellent means of getting people's attention, because you're always seeing cars go by, and when one is unusual or abnormal from the others, you pay attention to it. So, but thank you.
Dave, would you be willing to put something together?
Sure.
I think we could deputize you to do something, maybe keep it simple, because it sounds like something we want to build on over time, but just to out of the gate, holiday safety advice, then on the chief's idea of, when you see a light, go to the right or whatever would make sense, and a visual, that would be terrific.
Sure. Yeah, I'll definitely look into that. I think there's probably some existing materials that we could repurpose.
Yes.
So sure, I'll see if I can find something in the next week, because I think it would be great to get it out before Thanksgiving.
Fantastic. Is everybody okay with that on the commission?
Yes.
Eli, Stan, you're okay with all that?
Yep.
It seems
Yeah.
really apple pie and the American flag. So I would love to have that on the website. That'd be a great start.
It might be easiest to get it out through our social media channels first, because those are really, that you don't have to do any coding, or I think getting it on the website might be a little more of a challenge.
You want to put it on Nextdoor or something like that?
Pardon me?
You're thinking about Nextdoor?
Yeah, Nextdoor and Twitter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Let's
So
do it.
Chief,
I trust your judgment.
Should I work with Quinn on
That
that,
would be
Chief?
great. She's certainly got, I'm sure, a host of things from an educational standpoint or from a messaging standpoint she would probably like to share. I don't want to oversaturate her right now, so maybe if you talk to her and ask her, is there someone else that can take this work on, or it may have to be her to just send you an email with some information, but certainly it's a good start. But I also have Chief Matt Windrum here, who might be a good resource. He's here Monday through Friday as well.
Okay.
But yeah, Quinn's a good start, certainly.
Okay. I'll try and find something that's
I didn't want
turnkey.
to just be centered on her, that you were looking at her end, so that she knows that there's not an expectation that she's got to provide you with all the materials you need.
Okay. Well, hopefully I can find something that she can use, and then it's just a matter of posting it. That way we can keep her focused on more urgent priorities.
Yeah, she's got her hands full. We're bringing on new staff, which is part of some of what I'm going to share in our report in a little while too. But so she's, as always, busy and making things happen for us. So
Excellent. Thank you. Very good, Dave. Thank you. I appreciate you bringing that up and doing it. Anything else?
No, that's it. Thanks.
Okay. Stan, anything for the Fire Commission today?
I have a question. Of course, in the headlines recently, we were reading that there may be a vaccine not too far away, one would hope. But the question is, what are we doing and how do we do it department-wide for COVID testing and isolation when needed?
okay. Well, a couple of things. One, I think as of tomorrow, the colors testing site is going to be shut down, if I'm not mistaken. There's some conversation underway with another agency called Curative, who may be working in the area already and has got, substantial experience doing testing. So we're in conversation with HR to try to see about bringing them on board as the next agency that can work with us. You always have your own personal HMO as an option as well, but from a public safety driven effort for police and fire and others, we're probably going to be moving towards Curative from what I can tell so far.
So do we have the staff at the stations tested once a week, every other week, once a month?
No, they were offered a period of time where they were slotted into a time frame that worked for those individuals, and they were actually sent to go and test station or crew by crew. And that goes back at least 3-4 months ago. And so others are opting to go back and test themselves periodically, just because they want to make sure they're doing their due diligence and not find themselves, surprised, especially going home to their families. So I think you'll find that more often than not, people are getting tested. The sources that we were testing at, one was over at the Marin Civic Center. That shut down, as is this other company that's, or it's shutting down, as is another location, another site that testing was taking place. And so as soon as we have definitive information about our contractual relationship with Curative, that's going to be pushed out to the members as well. There is something else that the Marin County Fire Chiefs Association just brought forward this week about another option for testing. And there's some questions about individuals who may have received training early on when the pandemic started with different individuals with different personnel from different departments throughout Marin County who had volunteered to become testers. And so whether or not they're testers and can now administer tests internally to all public safety instead of us having to drive off site, maybe you just have someone from your agency or from another agency come and provide the testing on site for your personnel. The timing and return on results is still anywhere from a day to 2 or 3 days. And it's unfortunate. I would hope that at some point we're starting to get the test that can give you the reading in 15 or 20 minutes, much like I believe they're using in the NFL and then other areas where they have to make sure that they protect their investment, right? So all that to say.
Yeah, NFL public safety. Let me think here. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
All right.
Chief, is everybody required to get a flu shot in the department? Is that a standard?
That's another one that I'm going to be pushing to city attorneys tomorrow. Apparently there's the county health has come out with information requiring everyone to receive the flu shot. Now, no one can decline, but what they can do is seek approval, stating that they'd like an exemption based on 2 criteria, one being for medical reasons, the other being for religious reasons. And so with that, those individuals that decline now are mandated to wear a mask anytime they interact with patients. Well, you can argue that they're already doing that because of the pandemic. So this is what's happening right now for the flu season. What about when there's an actual vaccine? What then? When you have some of the employees that say, I don't trust the vaccine, I don't want to take it. Now how do we account for crew safety, individual safety, community member safety with individuals who are responsible for providing for safety for all? How do we actually coerce or ensure that somehow or another we're protecting our interests but also respecting their privacy and or their desires to not be forced to put something into their bodies that they don't necessarily agree with for whatever reason? And so for me, it's a dilemma, because I feel like if you've chosen this profession and you understand your responsibility, you can't put others at risk. And if there's a vaccination, much like vaccinations have been used over time for any number of different reasons, then you know what, once it's proven safe, once it's proven effective, then if you want to continue in this line of work, you may be subject to having to take a vaccination. I bet you though, city legal staff will tell me differently. So with that, I wonder, yes.
Yeah, I think that's what you're going to get.
So
Tell
now
me
that
about
puts us
that.
in a dilemma though. So how do we figure this out? That we have some members who are opting to take the vaccination, others who refuse, and now everyone's still working harmoniously on an incident with individuals who may have been vaccinated, and now they're around someone who hasn't.
Yeah.
Well, it's a problem. And at the hospital, we had a rule that to work in the clinic, you had to take the flu shot every year. And there were people that couldn't for a medical reason. I didn't hear about religious reasons too much, but we said, look, we expect everybody to take it because we have to protect the patients. And we had very little pushback, but there's always a few people. And I think you can tolerate a few people. But if it's widespread, it's a real problem. With the COVID vaccine, it's looking very, very promising. Preliminary data, the Pfizer vaccine looks very promising, and I think it's going to be very safe. So once it's approved and it gets out there, it's going to take a while to get people vaccinated. But if people resist it, then you're going to have a problem.
Well, it's a community-wide problem with vaccines in general, and I think with the new COVID vaccines, because of the fact that they are so new, that and the sort of national, I won't even call it a dialogue, but the messaging that's come out of Washington is going to heighten the reluctance of many in the community to go get vaccinated. I mean, when the vaccine's available, sign me up,
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of skepticism. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of folks who stand back and wait and see for a little while what happens to those group of people. And I may be one of those who are inclined to say, I'd like to see, is this okay? Because I recall maybe it was polio or crickets or rickets rather, or something in the 50s where there was a rush to put a vaccination out there and there were some errors made and it led to some substantial injury of a lot of children that didn't need to be injured, but because it was because of haste. I don't want to see a similar repeat of that because someone's rushing the market to earn money and or be the first to say, well, look what we did, and now their shares go through the roof, but also so does public health right with it. So I just, but again, based on the initial results from what I'm hearing, Dr. Mizrak, you're absolutely right. It says 90% seem to be having a clearly favorable reaction to the vaccine. And so that's encouraging. What also concerns me, though, is what I just heard maybe 3-4 weeks ago, that they had to suspend the trial clinical efforts on this because there were some significant issues that occurred. And so I don't know if that was paralysis. I don't know if that was some really even beyond that, adverse reactions like death or something else. But it really begged the question, why are they suspending their efforts right now? What went wrong? So, and then to go out a month later and have somebody else come into market with something that's working really well, well, great. I'm glad all these great minds are working on a solution. I just want to know that it's safe, and I'm sure the public in the world would like to have something safe too.
Well, some of us that were around in the 50s know that the way they sold the polio vaccine was it was a drop of vaccine that was deposited on a sugar cube. And so everybody wanted that sugar cube.
Yeah. I can imagine.
But Chief, you're exactly right about that history of vaccines. The vaccine for polio, the Salk vaccine, the Sabin vaccine, they were safe, they were very effective. But 10 years earlier, or maybe it was 15, there was a horrible experience with the first vaccine before Salk and Sabin, and several 100,000 people got the vaccine, and there were a lot of cases of polio that were given through that ineffective vaccine. So you're right. There's a history of missteps. Right now, we kind of know what to look for side effects, so I think it's much safer. And those particular cases recently with the transverse myelitis, one turned out to be a case of MS that just happened to show up during that trial. And the second one they felt wasn't related. So they started that trial up again. And I think you're right that the Pfizer trial has 44,000 people in it, and it looks 90% or more effective. But once it starts to go to 1 million people or 10 million people or 50 million people, we're probably going to find some side effects you didn't see in the first 44,000. That's sort of the nature of rolling it out to more people who have different immune systems and different medical problems and different tolerance for things. So I'm with you. I don't want to be the first one to get the vaccine, but I don't want to wait too long.
One exception, maybe it'll grow my hair back, then maybe I'll try it, huh?
I'm hopeful too.
Yeah. Well,
that's how they found Viagra. Viagra was originally a blood pressure drug, and it turned out to have some side effects that were desirable.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So there you go. Okay, where are we? We're getting lost on a train of
Moving
thought.
right along.
Anyway, I think the vaccine would be a game changer, but not overnight. It's going to take 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. But in the long run, I think it will be a game changer in a positive way. That's my hope.
Yes.
Okay, so here we are. I want to say one more thing about sort of safety and doing an analysis. In the medical profession, we used to do what we would call a root cause analysis. Whenever we had an unexpected outcome, that is someone dying or having a major complication, we'd get together a group of people and look at every step of the process that led to that bad outcome. Like the guy in San Francisco who was knocked off the training tower. You would do a root cause analysis and try to say, well, this in the end is sort of what led to that happening, and you never want to see that happen again. So we got to put something in place operationally, a system which prevents that from happening. I think we sort of run into the same problems when we make mistakes. We call it heuristics, the way we look at things and how we look at trying to take shortcuts to get to answers sometimes. We all do this naturally. It's part of thinking through a problem, but there are some problems with heuristics like anchoring or most recent analysis and a variety of things. We could talk about that, Chief, as an educational opportunity for the firefighters. I'd be happy to participate because I made those presentations at the hospital and they were pretty well received. I called it Tales from the Crypt. We would go back over unexpected deaths and what did we learn from it and how can we prevent it in the future?
Right.
So I'd be happy to participate when you start doing those things.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we're up to the Chief's report. Has Nadine joined us? I don't think she has.
No, I don't think so. Let me see. No.
If she's not here, it's to you, Chief.
Oh, hang on. Let me just double check. Nope, she hasn't. Okay.
You're on.
All right. I'll try to go through this a little bit faster since I've spent too much time trying to provide my own personal perspective on a few things here. Sorry. I'm happy to report that the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, as promised, the crews from NCCC and AmeriCorps have arrived as of October 29th, and they're totaling 17 individuals who are highly motivated and out with their sleeves rolled up and really getting work done for us. And so I'm really grateful for the fact that we've been able to bring on yet 2 more teams. And I'm happy to report there's actually a 3rd team that'll be coming. We'll have 3 teams working simultaneously for a couple of weeks here in the San Rafael, Marinwood areas. And so that team doesn't arrive until I think the first week in December. But this is really huge. I mean, I've never seen something like this occur in any community where folks are able to come and really put in a lot of time drawing down risk in those communities, helping the homeowners who might have some challenges either financially or physically or both to help create more defensible space on their properties and then some of the open areas and fire breaks and roads and areas where we could really benefit from their efforts. And so, as stated in the report, if there's anyone that has an interest, please share that website with them, www.cityofsanrafael.org/wildfire-prevention-assistance/ or have them reach out via email at srfd.dspace@cityofsanrafael.org. Those individuals will go out, they'll have some dialogue with them, and more often than not, it looks like they're providing the assistance. I don't know that there's been anyone that's deemed unqualified to receive their help. And so please spread the word on that and hope that we can continue on with the great work that they're doing. I'm also hearing the possibility of them coming back even in January for spring efforts. And so this could almost be perpetual to some degree if you look at how often they've been around and how often they may actually be around moving forward for the next few months. On Tuesday, November 3rd, the day somebody? No? Okay. Tuesday, November 3rd, the day of the election, Director Mark Brown, the Executive Director of the MWPA, who's officially retired from the Marin County Fire Department, took a group of vegetation management specialists and defense or D-space inspection staff up to Santa Rosa to take a look at some of the areas where they had faced wildfire and those neighborhoods that were affected directly by the wildfires recently. And so they had a great opportunity to get firsthand photos, video, and just learning about the value of defensible space and even how some shrubs and some trees and things can actually help protect your structure. And so the photo kind of gave a glimpse of one of the neighborhoods where they visited, and you could see clearly where the open space, the fire stopped in those areas where the open space that was well maintained began. There in the photo, it was very difficult to see, but there are a couple of homes that were damaged and burned. And it turns out that those homes did not have that separation, if you will, that home hardening that we're asking folks to take care of, working outwards from their property, from their homes outwards onto their property. And so just a really great opportunity for learning and information exchange and sharing. And I think those individuals who got a chance to see that can speak even with more knowledge directly when they're working with the homeowners, trying to help them understand what needs to be removed and why. They can give them an explanation that helps them really put a real life context to what's going on and why they need to look at a plant that they may have already had some sort of affinity for. Well, maybe that plant's going to create a problem for you that you don't realize. Let's talk about that. And so just happy to see that took place. Guidelines, COVID-19. I've been talking to our crews about this and to our command staff. I was really concerned for a while there that we were moving towards the yellow tier, which was a tier that was in a move from purple to red to orange. We're in orange now, but after 3 weeks of meeting certain criteria, we would move to the yellow tier, which is less restrictive, enables even more people to gather in indoor spaces on a larger scale than what we're able to currently. And so that first 2 weeks, everything was trending downward, and then suddenly things reversed. And I think as you see the reversal, you're also watching simultaneously throughout the state and across the country a significant increase in the number of COVID cases now that is above and beyond what we experienced early on into the infections. And so I'm really stunned at that because, you know, it's one thing to watch it reverse and start going the other way. It's another thing to watch it reverse and reach new heights. And so with that, I'm just reminding everybody that, you know, they have to continue to do their due diligence and maintain social distancing, wear their mask at all times, think about others and think about themselves and think about protecting those that they care about and love by being responsible, washing their hands, and just realizing that we're not receiving the vaccine just yet. And we're not by any means out of this just yet. And so we need to continue to do that same due diligence that we were doing early on when New York City had their first responders going to calls around the clock with people expiring pretty much on every call they went on. And so we're not facing that here right now, but there's an upswing in other states, and that upswing could, return and find itself here in California if we're not really mindful of what we're doing and we don't continue to protect ourselves as first responders and as individuals in the community. So with that, some reopening of government services ironically started today here in San Rafael. And I'm not sure if that's going to be revisited, but they were looking to reopen City Hall a little bit more than they had been because they kind of figured since we were moving in the right direction towards lower end orange, maybe even into yellow, this would be a good time to start bringing people back to provide in-person services. Well, I'm not sure, but I get a feeling that might be put on pause for a little while, or at least scaled down to some degree. So we'll see. Dr. Willis has also made some changes here in the county when it comes to folks in their indoor activities. He's asking everyone for at least the next week or more to scale back for restaurants. Instead of 50% capacity, reduce it down to 25%. I'm assuming that's going to hold true for any other activity that's going on indoors, whether it's a nail salon, whether it's a gym, whatever else has indoor activities. 25% of the population that you normally would allow in there should now be what's true. And, I don't see them doing that at the grocery store, but it could get to that point at some point where they say only so many people in the store right now until some leave. I know Costco was doing that a while ago for maybe about a 2 or 3 week period, and then they stopped. But I think that's because the numbers were trending in the right direction, but we'll see. Next item, the NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. We have received roughly 230 or so Noaa Radios, which for Fire Safe Marin has been very good about obtaining through the MWPA funding. They actually bought about 1,000 of them. They've been distributing them to the different communities based on population, based on a few other variables. But the end result is these radios are pre-programmed and they have batteries already installed, but this will serve as a redundancy to our emergency alert system, our ability to receive information in the event the cell tower is down, in the event the public safety power shutoff takes place. We have really no access to outside information. These radios are set to deliver information only when it's really an imminent threat and you need to be aware and make some decisions about your neighborhood or your family safety. And so with that, I think initially they're looking at giving these to maybe the community leaders for FireWise community leaders and others who may have a real vested interest in testing this out, seeing how well it works for them, but also taking a kind of lead approach towards communicating to their neighbors that, hey, we've got an emergency, so that folks start to get mobilized pretty quickly because somebody happened to be listening to that radio and got information in a really timely manner, along with directions and or instructions for what to do next. So I think that's a really a great redundancy. And I know there's concerns, but there's other redundancies. There's high-low sirens. There's a bunch of other things that we're looking at, not just the Noaa Radios as being the sole solution. I just want to emphasize it's just one of multiple tools that we're trying to put in place so that if something happens in the middle of the night and those other conditions I described exist, you've got a backup means of getting information. Oh, by the way, they're not going to be sending out information just randomly about Firewatch or some other advisory type information. They want to wait and actually push information when there's an actual emergency that you need to take action on. And so they don't want to dilute the value of the radio and then people turn the radio off because they don't really, feel like it's going to be what they need it to be because it becomes almost routine or they become dismissive, like an alert that comes from Alert Marin where it's educational, but not necessarily an action item. They don't want people to lose the value of this resource. So emergency incidents, election preparedness. Well, I have to say, I'm really glad that we were in a position to take a proactive stance for the election and any potential unrest we thought could result from that. I came from Oakland. I suggested to the Marin County Fire Chiefs and to the police chief and here in San Rafael that maybe we should have an incident action plan just in case. And I think everyone was in agreement. I'm glad to see that everyone kind of mobilized and the county stood up their EOC and brought in additional officers, especially during a peak period timeline of I think 3 to 11 p.m. on the election night, and then again the next day. And the whole goal was just to make sure if things happen, we have a plan and members know and really understand what's expected of them. And so I pulled one of my old safety messages from my days as deputy chief and then fire chief, where we had did Warriors parades with almost 1 million people, where we had did the Oscar Grant and the Meserly trial, the Occupy Oakland. I mean, there was so many different things. It got to a point where you had really unruly crowds who were throwing rocks, bottles, and or outright assaulting people. And we just wanted to make sure that our members knew when to engage and when not to engage, what steps to take, how to do so safely, when to go in with force protection, under what circumstances. If it's a vehicle fire and it's not next to a structure, you're not going to put the fire out. It's not that serious. If it's a fire in the basement of a high rise, that's a different story. So all that to say is there were some parameters and some safety message that was put out, and there was an incident action plan that had communications, that had alternate destinations for hospitals. What will we actually need to do in the event they decided to take over Highway 580 right at the San Rafael Bridge? Now what? Okay, we're going to go north, or we're going to get somebody in a boat. Last weekend, I believe they actually had a protest that was slated to take 2 hours and shut down the Golden Gate Bridge. And so with that, I was concerned it could be a splinter group that would do the same thing over here at the San Rafael Bridge, because I've been in a situation where they've taken over 3 highways, 980, 580, and 880 simultaneously, and shut down traffic in all 3 highways. And so just wanted to make sure we were thinking worst case scenario, even though I don't really think we have the same type of level of protest or unrest or civil demonstration here in this community, but they said they've been seeing things happen that they had not seen before. So maybe being prepared was an ideal thing to do just in case, because we don't know for sure if some of that stuff's going to migrate over here, for example. I think, if I'm not mistaken, what happened at the mission involved a couple of people from Oakland, where they were defacing or tearing down one of the statues there. So you just never know when things are going to migrate or when, you know, things are going to escalate. And that could have been from either side, depending on the outcome of the election. So we had an IAP in place, and I think it's helpful. And what it's going to do, if nothing else, is it'll help us build moving forward also, in the event there's going to be some issue at the inauguration, as an example. We'll probably do some similar partial ELC activations and prepare, pardon me, for possible unrest that day as well. But fortunately, I really have nothing to report on that, and that's great news. Last but not least, there's a picture of the Emergency Operations Center and the activation, and there's Quinn Gardner in the background helping to set up that ELC in the event it was needed for partial or full activation purposes. So that's as much as I have, unless there's any questions.
Any questions for the chief? Anyone? Anything anyone wants to add?
Actually, I do have a question. The MWPA, do we have a sense of a reliable budget that is used at San Rafael's discretion? I know that, you know, San Rafael being one of the larger communities, I don't want to make any assumptions, but I'm just curious, do we have predictability when we think about annual planning or quarterly planning? Like, how does that work?
I think if we look at the three different pots of funding, one is core funding, which comprises 60% of the total monies we anticipate receiving. The other two pots, 20% each, are for local or agency specific projects, and others that are D-space or defensible space centric. And so with that, in San Rafael, roughly those two 20% pots are about $900,000+ each. So with that, we've used the money for hiring staff that help fund the hiring of the park rangers, as an example. It helps to hire the funding for the vegetation management specialists that we're onboarding right now. It helped to pay for the seasonal 6 defensible space inspectors, 3 of which have left already. 3 we still have on the books, probably going until sometime in December, until they reach their capacity of 960 hours. The funding goes also to pay for different projects or different educational items, maps. We have a project called Zone Haven. I'll probably present more information to you guys about that here in the next month or so, after we get a little more resolve on what's going to happen with that evacuation tool on a countywide basis. And so we're waiting to hear exact figures. We understand that sometime in December we should know, based on the taxes that are returned back, what the exact numbers are for each community. And then that'll help establish what you're able to spend moving forward as well, or what's going to be billed or paid back to you for your, the money you've expended in anticipation of receiving that funding.
Great, thank you.
Sure. So again, it's still forthcoming. I'm assuming that Nadine will have a really good handle on this, probably sometime in January at the latest, based on when all that data comes in. What does this look like? And I can tell you that the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority decided to hold the core allocation aside, the 60%, and not distribute that to the agencies, partly because they hadn't received it, and partly because they want to use it and preserve it to move it for future use, and then ensure that we have a gap period covered in the event we have to renew on the back end of the 10 years. Then that gap period is covered with the funding that we didn't spend up front. So we used the 2 core project pots to start doing easily, readily, shovel-ready, highly visible but meaningful projects right away. The core allocation That's going to be for your heavier lifts, for some of the things that we haven't gotten to that'll also be visible, but it's involving a lot more money, probably involving requests for proposals and a lot of other things that take a little bit more time to ensure that we're getting the scale of work done and with the most competitive pricing and those sorts of things as well.
Yeah, I'm assuming the insight is going to be related to when the first assessor payment is really due in early December. So I'm sure that's going to be the first kind of telltale.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Then I hope to Zoom with you in December. Have a great Thanksgiving holiday. Stay in small groups, get your flu shot, pray for the vaccine to be distributed in a timely manner and to be safe and effective. And thank you for participating. Bye, everybody.
Thank you all. Take care.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.